G'day guys, Mac with the Outer Circle, and in this episode of Getting Started in the Horus Heresy, the Ultramarines, Part 2. So, I'm going to say something a little bit controversial here. I think this is actually a very good legion. I don't think they're anything beyond middle tier, but there is nothing bad about the basic legion. What's underwhelming, as we'll get to, is things like, well, Rite of War, Warlord traits, that kind of thing. But overall, the Legion is incredibly balanced in their playstyle. So let's get into it. The Ultramarines have the Strength of Wisdom as their Legion trait. Essentially, Markalites. When an Ultramarines unit shoots at an enemy unit, if any other Ultramarine unit also shoots at the same unit afterwards and they're within 6 inches of that original unit, or another unit that has shot at that unit previously, they will gain +1 on their to hit roll. This is force-wide. There is nothing in there about infantry only or anything like that, so anything with the Legion as a start is Ultramarine. The only restriction will be on blast and barrage weapons, which we all know are not very good in this edition anyway. So, imagine this. You have a Predator squadron full of las cannons, and you want to shoot an enemy tank. Well, you have an Ultramarines unit walk up. As long as they're within 6 inches of your Predator squadron, they can fire a bolt gun even at the enemy tank. And as long as they have shot at it, then your Predators get +1 to hit on all their las cannons. It's just handy. There's no special need beyond that. There is no limitation to how many times you can use it per turn. There is no, must be within 6 inches of a Praetor or anything like that. It's just, no, other Ultramarines unit shoots at you within 6 of them, then you get +1 to hit. It's just handy. It's a simple, easy bonus, and I like it. Their advanced reaction is a bit of a weird one. It's the Unity of Purpose. So, it's made once per battle during the opposing player's shooting phase when an enemy unit declares a shooting attack targeting a friendly unit. So when they start shooting at you, you say you're going to use this, so you kind of don't know the outcome yet. But they'll declare their shooting attack on you, they'll resolve the hits, the wounds, and you'll do the armor saves. But you do not do the damage mitigation, so feel no pain or shrouding. After you've done this, the unit that was shot plus another Ultramarines unit, no limit written on range or anything like that, they're just going to have line of sight to the enemy unit, may also shoot at them. So let's say the enemy comes down and they do a deep strike. They do a deep strike on you. They then fire at your unit after they arrive from deep strike. You could turn a las cannon heavy support squad around on the spot and start sniping at those guys who were foolish enough to shoot at you. It's a very strong reaction, actually, and not so dissimilar to many other reactions. So nothing unique about it, but potentially very strong. Alright, going on from there, we get to the Warlord traits. So the Burden of Kings is the first one. It's a loyalist-only Warlord trait. So in any phase in which one or more wounds are caused on your Warlord, Praetor, Centurion, whoever it may be, you get It Will Not Die, and you gain Fearless until the end of your next turn. And the It Will Not Die is on a 4+, so a 50-50 chance to recover the wound. That's pretty handy. Now, it doesn't say anything about there, whether it's saved or unsaved, for the purposes of actually triggering it, beyond the fact that they just have to wound you. So, you could pass your armor save, you could pass the feel no pain, whatever it might be, it triggers. It's not an overly impressive one. I mean, it's only going to affect the Warlord, but yeah, I'd take that. That's not terrible. The next one is the Aegis of Wisdom. So, any friendly unit of Ultramarines, when they're near the Warlord, or within line of sight of the Warlord, if they need to regroup, they get to use his leadership for the regroup, and if they're successful, they basically act as if they didn't even regroup this turn. They pretty much act as normal. Can shoot, declare charges, all that kind of thing, and they get an additional shooting reaction. Yeah, I like it. It's not that crash hot, but it'll do. And then Pride's Dark Power, which is traitor only, and it is not a very good one. It's once per battle, which automatically puts it in the bottom tier of Warlord traits. You never want something that's only one use only, because then you could have an enemy player who's just benefiting all game from their Warlord trait, and yours is a one and done. If it's going to be a one and done, it wants to be spectacular, and this is not. All you do is you swap your toughness and your leadership basically on your Warlord for that turn. Well, actually, your leadership becomes their toughness. But there's a problem here. There is nothing in there about it being your unmodified leadership. So, if you're leadership 9, great, your Warlord became toughness 9. But if you've got fear-causing enemies, or something happens to your Warlord to drop his leadership, that could make this ability far less useful to you. And really, as a one-off, okay, it might be helpful in, say, a challenge, for example, or against an enemy dreadnought, might save you from instant death. But you're still going to be suffering the effects of brutal from those attacks, and hey, murderous strike, 6s to wound anyway at that Paragon Blade or instant death, so it doesn't get you out of that threshold. It's incredibly situational, and I think for the amount it's going to be actually pulled off in the game, where it's going to be useful, I think you're better off just taking the Aegis of Wisdom instead if you're a trader. It's just better for you. You're more likely to be having to roll regroup checks, thanks to the low leadership of Marines in this edition. Now we get to probably the worst part of the Ultramarines, and that is their Rite of War, the Logos Lectora. There's one bonus, and it's the Logos Lectora commands. So you get to pick one of these, you can't use the same one 2 turns in a row, and it affects the entire army, and the problem here is it only affects the infantry in the army. And the benefits it gives are not too crash hot, because it may be really good for one unit, but it could really handicap you on another. So for example, full march. All of your infantry gain +2 movement characteristic, but reduce their weapon skill and ballistic skill by -1. So you could have, say, Assault Marines. You want to get them across the board faster. You go, cool, I'm going to pull this off. Full march. But if you've also got, say, a missile launcher heavy support squad, they're now at -1 ballistic skill. That's not helpful. It's helping one unit, yes, but you just handicapped you know, the rest of your army while you're trying to cover that tabletop distance. The next one is Hold Fast. All models with the infantry type, again, it's all infantry that this affect. Increase their leadership by +1 and may re-roll all failed to hit rolls during a shooting attack, but may not move or run in the movement phase. So you pin your own army in place for the turn, essentially, where everyone's going to stand still, and yep, they're going to be slightly better at taking leadership checks and slightly better at shooting. In fact, they're going to be a decent bit better at shooting, but you're now stuck in place, you're pinned in place, so you've just given the entire maneuver advantage to the enemy. This one's really good for, say, Legion Heavy Support squads, but anyone who might be near an objective, for example, if you get shot off an objective slightly, lose models so you're not within 3 inches coherency or whatever, and it's one of those per turn scoring objectives, of which there are plenty in the Horus Heresy, then there's nothing you can do about that turn. You can't move at all. No running, no moving, done. Then you've got Retribution Strike, the third one. All models at the infantry unit type, again, must increase their weapon skill characteristic by +1 and gain a +1 to any charge rolls they make, but reduce their ballistic skill by -1. So again, that Assault Marine squad that I was talking about at the start there, they could have moved that extra movement the first turn, dropped your ballistic skill in your heavy support squad. And then you also take this other penalty, again, if you pull this one off. I just don't see the synergy in here. It should be chosen unit by unit. If it was unit by unit, this would be a fantastic Rite of War. But being army-wide, it is just so limiting, I think. And the last one is Regroup, which is all models the infantry unit type and the Legiones Astartes Ultramarines may reroll all failed leadership checks to regroup when falling back and any failed reserve rolls. The reserve rolls is okay, I guess. But the problem is you've got limitations here, and you've got 3 of them, actually. When you're using this Rite of War, you must take an extra compulsory HQ, and it's going to be a Master of Signal or a Damocles Command Rhino, both of which are going to do things with reserves anyway. They're very heavy on reserve manipulation.
you must take an extra compulsory troops choice, and you can't use any of the interesting deployment types. No infiltrate, no deep strike assault, no subterranean assault, no flanking assault. You can still use reserves, but any unit that is deployed using those special rules can't be taken. So that could be, say, Dreadnought drop pods, for example. So a really, really limiting Rite of War. I think if it's going to have all those limitations, it really should be applying this unit by unit. But in this edition of the game, the writers have written it to be very simplistic. It's just army-wide buff or nothing. And it's a very poor way of writing, in my personal opinion. So it's the only Rite of War they've actually got, and it's bad. But the Legion's not bad, so don't let me get you down. Armory of the Ultramarines. So the Legatine Acts has changed. It's now independent characters only for 5 points as an upgrade to Power Axe. Okay, but is that worth it for just flat AP2 at user's strength? I don't think so. I think on your independent characters, it's just not a good choice. Maybe on something like a Master of Signals, yeah, okay, it might be viable there. But if you're using on, say, like a Legion Champion, for example, you're taking that Paragon Blade, or you're going to take a Thunderhammer. They're just better options. Then we get to the Argyrum Pattern Boarding Shield. This is a 5+ invulnerable save against shooting and a 4+ in melee. For independent characters, it's 15 points. That's a lot for a boarding shield. And keep in mind, Praetors, they're coming with Iron Halos, so 4+ invulnerable save, or they're in Terminator armor, so they're already got this essentially built in. The only reason you would take it is because you want defensive grenades bonus on your characters, perhaps. In which case, just use a regular boarding shield, and I could see a use for it on something like a Legion Champion. A Legion Champion with a Paragon Blade, or a Legion Chaplain, or a Centurion Consul, a Siegebreaker, something like that. Okay, I could see it, but for 15 points, it's kind of situational. You're only going to be getting that benefit, really, when it's the attacks made in Assault. Because, hey, you might be a bit better at tanking the challenge on the chin. Maybe. I don't overly rate the shield at all on independent characters. Then we get to the Mantles of Ultramar, which is a bit weirdly written. It's one Praetor alone in the detachment, and 25 points for this upgrade. You get 2+ armor save. Well, again, Praetors come with a 2+ armor save, so why are you paying so many points? It gives you Battle Hardened 1, and you're no longer affected by the Blind special rule. The Mantle of the Elder Drake of the Salamanders, and immune to Blind. And you're paying the same points? Geez, good day to be a Salamander. But just like in the case of the Salamanders, whilst the Battle Hardened 1 is handy, it's going to save you from instant death against things like Thunderhammers, for example. Awesome. Or charging Dreadnoughts. It's the brutal attacks and the murderous strike weapons that kill Praetors. So very, very situational here. It will come in handy if you're fighting, say, someone with a power fist and somehow you fail to kill them before they punch you. Yeah, it's got its moment. And being immune to blind, whilst handy, it doesn't actually affect the rest of the Warlord's unit. So if it affected his whole unit, that would be amazing, but the Warlord only, questionable value. There's not a lot of blind in the game, and most of it's in the Iron Hands. The 2+ armor save conference is really bizarre, because is it replacing his armor? If it replaces his armor, well, that's not very helpful, because you'll lose your invulnerable save if it's Terminator armor. But it doesn't say it replaces armor. I don't know, it's just really weirdly written. Anyway, skipping over the Primarch, and we go straight into the specialist units. And here's where the Ultramarines kind of shine. I won't even go into the specialist units that are in the PDFs. They are good. Very good, in fact. But the Invictus Suzerain here, 175 points for 5 models. It's kind of pricey, that's Terminator points levels. But what do you get? Movement 7, heavy, You got Artificer Armor on the whole squad, 2 wounds, Weapon Skill 5, 3 attacks per model, Leadership 9. They've all got Legatine Axes, and they've all got the Argyrum pattern boarding shields. They can all take plasma pistols for 10 points a model. They don't, they suck now. And the one suzerain, however many of suzerain you have, any one of them may take a Thunderhammer for 10 points. I suggest taking a mix of Thunderhammers and Legatine Axes. With 3 attacks each, that's, if you roll well to wound, that's 9 brutal wounds. And, whilst you won't kill 9 models with it, you kill the equivalent of 9 models worth of wounds often enough. So, really, really nasty weapon there. For example, 3 wound models, okay? 3 wound models like Death Shroud. You can just punish them with an Invictus Suzerain because you could throw 9 wounds onto a Death Shroud model. And it doesn't matter that he's got 3 wounds, any one of them could kill him. Really, really good. 30 points per model. That Argyrum boarding shield is making them essentially Tartarus Terminators, and they become Cataphracti in close combat. They've got more attacks than Cataphracti by 1. They've got a higher weapon skill by 1. They're 5 points cheaper. They don't have a combi weapon, they have a bolt pistol instead, and the Legatine Axe is, as for built-in Legatine Axe and a Argyrum boarding shield, is really strong. So whilst those weapons suck on their own for independent characters, they are so good on this unit. They're also boosting the leadership on any Ultramarines unit. In fact, it's any friendly unit within 6 inches of them by +1. So awesome for tactical squads to rally around. It's just really, really good. They can be taken to replace your command squad or retinue, and you can give them a banner as well. Like, the Invictus Suzerain are a different beast to last edition. Last edition, with their, they hit you, they will go straight through and mess you up. In this edition, they're less likely to hit you on the 6 with those Legatine Axes and cause the auto wounds, but the versatility is better on the squad. They're a more balanced overall whole, and I think they're an incredibly strong unit, especially for the points. So, thumbs up, A++ unit. The Praetorian Breacher Squad is next. The Praetorian Breacher Squad is also fantastic value for points. 22 points a model. Normal breaches are, I think, 15 points a model. But you're getting an extra wound, you get an extra point of weapon skill, and you get a power sword. You'll also have Hammer of Wrath 1 and Chosen Warriors, so anyone can take, issue and accept challenges. That's really good. If you have a couple of Praetorian Breacher squads, I mean, if these were troops, they'd be as strong, or one of the strongest units in the game. They'd be as strong as Suzerain if these were troops, but they're not. They're elites. So they are competing with Invictus Suzerain, but they're enough cheaper over Invictus Suzerain, and at 22 points per additional model, I think they're pretty good. They'll make a solid sort of defensive line. So 2 units of Praetorians and a unit of Invictus Suzerain, or a unit of Praetorians and Invictus Suzerain, and with Apothecaries, those 2 units together, really, really good. I think Invictus Suzerain with the banner as a retinue squad, and take some Praetorians in elites, some Dreadnoughts in elites, and then you can just fill the rest of your army up on scoring stuff, because the enemy's going to have a real hard time just killing these guys. Just the survivability with multiple wounds, damage mitigation rolls from Feel No Pain, the boarding shields, the works. Just really solid units. And I think overall as an army, that's the Ultramarines. They don't have the specializations of the other legions. They're vanilla playstyle, but they do it so well. You can take any unit and you know that it's going to perform at a guaranteed level. It's going to be slightly better at shooting as an army, the Ultramarines, versus close combat, but the units they've got are no slouches. Like Praetorians, the weaker unit of them and Suzerain are going to hold their own in close combat. The Suzerain especially are going to just tank hits. So that's really the key with Ultramarines, I think, is holding your enemy in place or pinning them in place using these just rock hard units that can just take hits all day long. And then using your superior shooting to just destroy anything of the enemies that's not in close combat. That's really the Ultramarine playstyle. It's balanced, it's very middle of the road, it's very vanilla, yes, but hey, there are so few limitations on playing Ultramarines. It's good. It's a good Legion. Tank forces are fine to use. It's the only thing you don't want to be doing, honestly, is using their Rite of War, because it's terrible. So don't play them with a Rite of War. Play them as pretty much anything else, and they'll do really well. Anyway, Mac with the Outer Circle, thank you all for watching the episode. I hope you got something out of it, and I'll catch you all on the next one.